Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the costs of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout-out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Jeans, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of the podcast. What's going on, Julie?
Oh, trash trucks and
It's trash
and
day.
High school senior pictures.
Oh, how do they do that? Like, how's that working out with the social distancing? You have to send a selfie in?
It's weird. My daughter's school, they had to go to a separate studio, and it was a whole extravaganza. My son's school is a little different, and I don't think they take senior pictures as seriously. But so they're doing it at the school, even though they're doing distance learning right now. But they have appointments. They go in, and it's just them and the photographer social distancing.
Okay.
They have like slots of time. However, I just discovered this like this morning. There's a dress code, and he needs a button down and a suit jacket.
Okay.
And I just gave his last suit jacket away because he'd outgrown it.
Oh, no.
To a friend's son. I can't go and find him a nice suit jacket.
It's hard now to go shopping, right? Because
Exactly.
Yeah,
There's only a few places you can go.
Right.
And so I I texted my friend who I gave the jacket to and asked if I could maybe come get it just for the day.
Yeah.
And so that he can because he just can't button it. But other than that,
it only has to kind of be from like the neck up or like just from like
Exactly.
the chest up for a senior picture.
I guess. I don't know. I'm not getting any feedback from the school because it's through a company, obviously, but they're doing it at the school. But they keep talking about like bring a change of clothes and think about what poses you want to do. And I mean, yeah, when I was in high school, that was a thing where I went to school is you did like a portfolio of senior pictures.
Did you really?
Of like,
I
you would go out
that.
and I still have it. Well, some did it, some didn't. But we would it was a big deal in my little footloose town. We would go around to we would do some in-studio shots, and then we'd go out and do I did a barefoot shot in the grass with my jeans rolled up and my feet were bare.
This is ridiculous to me. In my little town, we had one photography studio in Stoughton Center, and we would all go there, and we would get our pictures taken. It took 5 minutes, and then we left, and it didn't matter how we looked.
That's pretty standard at most places. But yeah, ours in my little town, it was like probably like the closest thing you're ever gonna get to have to a professional photo shoot back then, and so people really went all out.
To bring this back around DNA, no. I recently,
Nice
Ancestry did like a thing. I don't have an account, like a paid account with them, but they recently gave us access for like 2 weeks to the yearbook thing, the yearbook search. Oh my God, that was fun.
It's so fun
to go back and look at relatives and find them in there. Some I could find and some I couldn't, but it was still fun to see the yearbook photos. And
yeah, I like trolling my friends with that.
So that's something that's always available if you have a paid subscription to Ancestry, correct?
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, there are additions. I'm not sure. You have to be at a certain level.
I see.
Because there's many different subscriptions where, like mine, I have a subscription to newspapers.com so I can get obituaries, and Fold 3, which is the military, and that, which is why when I get a new client, I like to build the tree from their account. Like I start the tree on their account and then I invite myself so that I can work it from my account.
I see.
Because I have all the bells and whistles.
Yes. Well, and then I noticed, like, I keep getting emails from them, from Ancestry, saying, oh, if you can join just on the U.S. account where you can search all these U.S. records. And I thought, well, that's not really going to be that helpful for if I want to go back, because we all come from other places. We are or were a melting pot.
Well, there are certainly some people that are not interested in beyond when they came here. I'm like, well, what about your family back in Latvia? They're like, I don't care. I'm like, all right then.
Well, because I'm not that far removed from relatives who came from other countries, so
Right. In fact, you remember a while ago, we were looking at your matches, and there was that one gentleman who said, I think I said he was a retired stunt actor or something.
This is not ringing a bell.
And he said, okay, well, he was a relatively close match. No pun intended. Actually, pun intended. But he didn't know his last name, but he knew he was Irish.
All right.
And I was like, oh, he's looking for somebody, and he was a relative of yours. He texted me, or he messaged me, asking about your family, and he's related through the Boyles.
Have we talked about this? This is I feel like I'm drawing a complete blank. I have no memory of this. Did we talk about this?
We talked about him, but we didn't really get specifically talk about. I mean, we talked about. I just thought his bio was interesting.
Oh,
That's why we talked about it. We didn't really get beyond that.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was like, "Well, can you give me Richard's contact information?" And I'm like, "Trust me, he will know nothing." Because he is related to the Boyles that stayed in Ireland.
I see, yes.
And you're the only Boyle that we know of that you know anything about was your great-grandmother.
Or no, my grandmother's last name, her maiden name was Boyle.
Oh, yes. Well, so it was her, but she came from Ireland.
Yes.
And so he obviously is from the UK, and so whoever his father is was based in the UK.
Okay. And thanks for not giving out my name to random, or my information to random, distant relatives just yet.
Yeah, I was like, I think I can probably help you. So,
although I will say, we had a nice little treat this past week. The gift fairy visited my door. Yes. It was you, Julie, but it was you were actually just sort of delivering something that somebody sent something to us, and I want to thank Kate McNabb. Londigan, who sent us beautifully handmade DNA face masks to wear, and I love it. Yeah,
they have the fabric is like DNA.
It's got like little DNA strands on it. And Julie, you put a picture of yourself on the Facebook group wearing the mask.
Yes, I did.
Yes, but I just want to thank Kate for sharing that with us. It was very thoughtful, and I was so touched to receive it.
We love it when that happens.
It's just, the fact that we do this little dog and pony show in our, respective homes, and then it's
which
just
is the dog and which is the pony? That's what I want to know.
Depending on the week,
Sure.
And we do it, and it goes out into the world, and I know people are listening and all that, but I don't really know that people are listening. And then for somebody to be thoughtful enough to send a gift, I was really touched. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Kate. It's really and in the same vein as that, we finally had our first Ask Me Anything on Facebook.
Oh, how did that go?
This past Saturday. Thanks to Emma Still, who is one of our Aussie listeners, for kind of like forcing me to do it because I've been really bad because technically I'm challenged. Mm-hmm. But she's like, hey, if we're not getting an episode every week, can we at least do the AMA? I'm like, yes, we can. And you need to help me. So we planned on a time, and we only had Emma and Jenna Robertson and Carly Anderson showed up this last Saturday. But we had a really fun conversation talking about various and sundry things. And it was great. And going forward, we have decided that we're going to do it at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on the last Saturday of every month.
That's great.
In the Facebook, the CutOff Jeans Patreon only group.
Oh, how fun.
Right. So if you're a patron, you can join the group. I'll recognize your name. And then we will be doing that, and I'll keep sending out reminders, and maybe we can get like a few more. And it's just like a Zoom call. It's on Facebook, but it's like a Zoom call.
Oh, maybe I'll join you on one of those. That might be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be your special added guest.
Okay. So, this last week I discovered an interesting glitch on 23andMe.
Oh.
And I don't know how it happened. I think it is in conjunction with the trees, their automated trees that they have there, which is like some kind of algorithm guessing at where somebody fits on your tree. So one of my cases, they're not cold cases, but some cases are on hold because we just need closer matches to be able to move forward. And one of those people messaged me and said, hey, how's it going? I see there's a new close match on 23andMe. And I'm like, there is? Oh, okay, I'll go look. And I went there, and it said it was a first cousin once removed. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. That's good. So I started to research her. It was 23andMe, which is always more difficult because they don't have trees there, and it's harder to find people there. However, upon further research or further examination, I realized she only had 88 centimorgans in common, which is nowhere near a first cousin once removed.
Why did it think it was a first cousin?
I do not know. Mm-hmm. I don't know how they arrived at that. I don't know whether it is. You have the ability now, like if 23andMe says what they think somebody is, you can change it and put what they really are.
Okay.
But I don't know why 23andMe thought that. Because she's closer to a third cousin. So I switched it to third, and my client was unfortunately and not surprisingly disappointed.
There's a glitch in the matrix.
There's a glitch in the matrix. So that was a bummer, and I'm not sure. I posted about it on some of the pages, and some people said that there seems to have been glitches with this new tree that they're building, and I don't know if maybe the match decided that's what it was, and she changed it. I don't know.
Speaking of a glitch in the matrix.
Yes.
This is I'm going far out in left field. I can't believe I just made a baseball reference, but I did.
That doesn't happen here.
It's actually the only position I played in Little League, left field, praying the ball would never come to me.
Me too.
You played Little League?
I did. I played softball.
Oh, wow.
I was a bitter disappointment to my father.
So what I should have said when we were talking about the yearbook photos that we could go back and look at on Ancestry was when I went and looked at one of my yearbooks. So I only had the yearbook from my senior year. I didn't have from my first 3 years of high school. I don't own those, so I haven't seen them ever. And there was a picture of me and another classmate meeting that then Governor Michael Dukakis of Massachusetts.
Oh, I saw that.
Yes. And it was like from the yearbook. It was in black and white. And here I'm shaking his hand, and it said I'm giving him an acting award because I was in the school musical at the time. We were handing him an acting award for his appearance on St. Elsewhere. And I have no memory of that at all.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That is crazy because that's kind of a big deal in somebody's, especially if they're in high school. You meet like a presidential candidate. Was he a candidate?
He was
yet?
not. He was
No,
actually
wasn't.
the governor
Okay.
of Massachusetts. But, he was big in Massachusetts at the time. He was the governor.
Yeah.
But I wasn't political or I didn't know much about politics, but I knew who he was, but I have no memory of it. So I posted it on Facebook and I tagged the girl the woman, who's now a woman. The Annie.
Yes.
And she has no memory of it. And I'm actually in touch with my drama teacher who would have been involved in that, and she had no memory of it. And that
is so weird.
And so how did this big thing happen? And nobody who was involved, and other friends who were, in that circle of drama people in high school at the time, they have no memory of it. No one.
Okay, we need to get behind this. I think there's some kind of conspiracy.
3 years ago, 2 years ago, I was playing piano at a party here in Los Angeles, and Governor Dukakis was there, and I have a picture of him and me together. And I didn't.
And you could have said, "Hey, remember me from Stoughton?"
Remember, I gave you an acting award for your appearance in St. Elsewhere in 1984.
I loved St. Elsewhere, brother.
But it's weird to know that something happened that like you said, that was big that I don't remember. And somebody said,
Yeah.
oh, maybe it's a glitch in the Matrix. Like it's it's an alternative reality.
It's an alternate universe.
And none of us.
That kind of makes more sense to me than a lot of other things.
Well, I would certainly rather believe that than the fact that I'm senile.
Always.
But all my friends from the same time and my drama teacher and all these people don't remember it. So anyway.
That's weird.
It is. It's very weird. It's a very weird occurrence.
It's weird, Richard.
I wonder if Governor Dukakis remembers it. Oh, yeah. He didn't remember me either.
Well, then there's definitely something wrong here.
That's right. Anyway,
Oh my gosh.
I think we should take a break after that.
Very well.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
Okay, we're back.
Hello.
Hi. All right. I had a great story about Charlemagne. They apparently identified some bones that were buried under a church. And then at the last minute, I was going over it and realized it has nothing to do with DNA, only bone fragments. So I had to go and find another DNA case. And you know what? There's DNA cases everywhere, frankly, in this day and age. And here's a really good one. So a New York State trial judge denied the current resider in the White House a bid Thursday to delay a defamation lawsuit by magazine columnist E. Jean Carroll. She accused him of rape in the 1990s.
She accused Trump of rape in the
Yes.
1990s. Okay.
Yes, because she came out a couple years ago with the story how she was in Bergdorf Goodman's and she was talking to him and he pushed her into a dressing room and assaulted her.
That's such a high class story.
Yeah.
I wasn't raped in like some alley. I was raped in
was
Bergdorf
Goodman's. I have a friend who was a former guest that was conceived in Bloomingdale's. So, what do you want?
Which department?
Worked there.
That is something else. All right.
She is suing him for defamation because he went out and said he's never met the woman, which is crazy because he's Donald Trump and she's E. Jean Carroll, and you know that they've met each other. There's no way they haven't met each other.
So he's supposed to give some kind of DNA sample?
Yes, because she has a dress that she has not washed since then that has unidentified male. Wait, what's the word?
A stain. A stain?
Yeah, it's not unlike what has happened before.
Yes. And always also involving a president.
Yes, it has unidentified male genetic material on it.
That's so clinical.
That she was wearing that day. So, but I sort of love the story.
I've gone into hotel rooms that had unidentified genetic material on the bedspread, and and I've called down to the front desk, and depending on which hotel it was, they would do something about it. The Motel 6, not so much.
This is why we take the bedspread off the first thing we do when we go into a hotel. We roll it up and put it under the bed.
Well, if Trump won't give his DNA sample, I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to get it from any of the other women that have sued him before.
Yuck. I do hope, I hope he has to give the sample before he's out of office, by the way. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well.
So, yeah, she decided. So, I'll just give you a quick. In her ruling, Justice Verna Saunders greenlighted the court to collect Trump's DNA sample and continue Carroll's public trial before the 2020 campaign season.
Wow.
So, it's ongoing. Good times. All right. Okay. I have an awesome story from the trenches.
Okay.
This is a good one. So I often have cases where I would say 50-50, where when I get a case, it looks pretty good and the matches are high and look pretty solid, but then things happen and it is not as it appeared, and I have to tell a client, we need to wait for new matches. These are actually not as good as as it was presented originally because of various sundry reasons. So on this particular case, so the highest paternal match at the time was 423 centimorgans. We'll call that Lady Barbara.
Lady Barbara.
And that indicates a probable first cousin once removed or a half first cousin, among other less likely scenarios. She had a small tree, and so I built off of that. And I wasn't getting anywhere, like none of the names were clicking with any of the other names in any of the other trees or anywhere else I'd been, which is a worry. So I finally talked to her, and she said that there had been rumors in her family that her father was an NPE. And that tracks because and I basically said, those rumors are probably correct because nobody with your surname is even close to a close match to you. So I had to set that aside, and I couldn't use that.
What's the next step then?
So at that point you have to eliminate that match because they're not going to be of help. I mean, the location is an indicator, and the location seemed to be correct with some of the others. So, it was an NPE situation, obviously. Yeah. There was a slightly lower match. We'll call her Maggie, and I built a tree for her, but I didn't get anywhere, and I wasn't tracking with any other matches either. Her mother had been from California, which helped because the client was conceived and born in California. Now, she already knew who her mother was, and her mother had given her a couple of names of the guys that she thought it was, or one that she thought it was and one that it maybe could be. Okay. Neither of those names were in the matches either. So we always follow the DNA. So I was stuck with that particular line, but there's always a second line on, there's usually 4 lines, significant lines on 2 on each side. So the second line had lower matches, but enough to where I was able to build out a branch and was able to connect most of the people on that line. And they were from West Virginia. And I got as far as narrowing it down to one set of siblings. And there was only one who had any connection to Southern California. And I found him in the census, and I also found his death notice, but there was no indication of marriage. No, there was indication of marriage, but no indication of children. And that's as far as I could get with him. And we will call him Orville Bjorky. That's not his name, but I like that name. So
we have Lady Barbara and
right.
Orville Bjorky?
Right. Barbara. Okay. So we got Barbara, Maggie, and Orville Bjorky. Okay, so I was stuck now. And so I just kept going into circles, and I would come to the same conclusion that this is as far as I can get with this. This is as far as I can get with this. That's when I message the client and say, I'm so sorry. There's, we're just not having luck with what we have. We have to wait for closer matches to come in. And it happens all the time. And we don't know how long it'll take. but I'm not giving up, I promise.
Right.
So a couple weeks later, so whenever that happens, I usually spend 1 day a week going back to cold cases and looking at their DNA, seeing if there's anything new, looking at their tree, seeing if I've missed anything, just rehashing it a little bit just to make sure I was on it and haven't missed anything. And on this particular client, there was indeed a new match.
Oh.
And it was a good one. She matched at 1406 centimorgans, which is really close. That's like a half sibling close. And turns out I talked to her, and she was the aunt of Maggie, the one who I said her mother had been from the Los Angeles area. In fact, she lived right around here. She was the aunt, and so she helped me build out her tree a little more. And once again, her mother's surname wasn't tracking. And there was nobody with that name. And I said to her, is there a chance that your mother's father was not really her father? And she would have none of it and said that's crazy. That's not a thing. But she did say that her mother had told her not long before she died that she had had a child out of wedlock before she'd been married to this match's father, and had given him up for adoption.
Was it
in
like
California,
like a deathbed confession or something?
It's something like that.
Yeah.
But she also gave her a name of who the father was of this said child, so she knew that she had a half sibling out there, a half brother.
I see.
And I'm like, well, that's very interesting. And she said, let me go see if I can find the name. So in the meantime, I start working on the tree, and I keep coming back to, there is no way this woman's father is her father. Mm-hmm. She comes back and says, oh, I have the name for you of the guy that my mother said was the father of the child that she gave up. It was Orville Bjorgi.
Okay. Wow. Well, there you go.
So that she happened, the odds of her knowing the name of the father of the child that her mother had given up.
Right.
But her mother had been lucid enough to say, the guy's name is Orville Bjorgi, write that down.
Oh my God.
Because he is the father of your half-brother.
Crazy.
So I connected it. So that I was right. That guy was... Orville Bjorgi was the grandfather of my client.
Wow.
The unfortunate thing is that child was obviously adopted out. Mm-hmm. And we know that he was the son of the aunt's mother and Orville Bjorgi, but we can't track him after that until one of his kids or until one of his descendants test. So that's as far as I can get for the client for obvious reasons.
Right.
But, yeah.
And I guess you just sort of have to hope that these people do test.
Well, and they do. And this is just an example of how I told her. A lot of the times people tell me I hate to when I get to a point and I have to tell them that. And it happens, I would say, there's a percentage of times that it happens. I'm going to say maybe 30%.
Yeah.
To where I've built as far as I can, and I realize that I can't go any further without more data. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell them that, and I get various reactions from them thinking that I didn't do my job or thinking that they were promised and blah, 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 blah. But this is a perfect example of you just have to be patient.
Right, right.
And I'm not going to close the case.
You know, I'm kind of surprised. Like when I go on Ancestry and look at my shaky leaf hints and all that stuff, I know I have a ton of cousins on my dad's side. There's only one who I know when I see her name, but everyone else, they're not there. So like none of my cousins have tested because they would match with me, right?
Right.
So like their name.
None of your first cousins.
Right, my first cousins, and I know
Yes.
I've got probably 40 of them. Because my dad was one of 9 children.
Right.
And 8 of those siblings had children. So So I'm shocked, just shocked that none of them
shocked, I tell you.
I know, really, that they haven't tested. Although when I know my family and they're a little weird, it's not that shocking when I really think. Look how long I waited to test, and I did it under duress.
What are you saying?
My family likes to keep secrets.
Most families do. All right. So that is our story from In the Trenches story of the week.
Great. Well, let's come back with our interview segment.
Let's. Okay.
Thank you for listening to Cut Off Jeans with Julie Dixon Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/Cutoff Jeans podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, we're back, and it is story time.
My favorite time of the week. No, these are great stories. I love listening to these.
Yes. I want to thank Bobby Ginder, actually, for drawing my attention to this one. And he actually contacted Jen before I had a chance to, because he wanted to hear the whole story, which is very cool.
That's cheating. That's cheating, Bobby.
I know, that's cheating, Bobby. But he contacted her for me. And then I love this. And I talked to her, and she's like, yeah, I think I talked to your partner. I'm like, no, you didn't, but close enough.
Oh, did she think you and Bobby were partners?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
No, but Bobby is actually the brother of a friend of ours.
Our friend Tom.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so this is Jen Moniello, and this is a 2-part story. This week's part is more background, and the meat of it is going to be next week, but both sides are very interesting.
Great.
So go ahead and have a listen to Jen Moniello. Hey, everybody. I have on the line Jennifer Hodge Moniello, who is here to tell us her story. Do you like to go by Jen or Jennifer?
Jen, usually.
Okay. So, Jen, I know the ending of the story because I read about it a little bit on Facebook, but I'd love to get some background as well. So can you tell us your story?
Yeah, sure. So in 2017, I got my husband a 23andMe kit, and we had so much fun with it that I decided to do one myself. I had been doing genealogy for about 20 years at that point. I knew I was a Georgia Salzburger. And when I got my results back, I was not related to anyone I expected to be. Mm. So knowing that my original maiden name was Weisenbaker, knowing that the Weisenbakers were big genealogists and that 23andMe was more at the time of a health and ancestry more than family tree building, I decided to do an ancestry kit. I thought, well, all the Weisenbakers must all be over on Ancestry.
Right.
So I did that kit, which came back on my birthday. Happy birthday. Oh. Yeah, you're
yeah, that's kind of ironic.
You're not who you think. Yeah, you're not who you think you are. So
what was your first clue other than the 23andMe test?
Well, I mean, I knew all the families I should be related to.
Right.
And it wasn't a mistake because I was related to people on my mother's side.
Right.
That made sense. So I started messaging people, as you do.
As you do.
And and said, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the name Weisenbaker, or maybe my father of record had 5 sisters.
Okay.
So the family kind of dotted out. Uh-huh. So I said, are any of these family names in your family? And the people who responded were like, no, we're sorry. We're not related to anyone from Georgia. We're from North Carolina. We're from Idaho. We're from Oregon.
Right.
But I actually come from my father comes from Appalachia. So there's a lot of endogamy. And that was entertaining to learn about. Yeah. And this particular match, we match on 3 family lines.
Oh, sure. Okay. Fun. That's fun.
So it was like, pick one. So she was a big genealogist. She said she'd been to Salt Lake City. It was something she had done with her husband, who is now deceased, and she still did it as a way of feeling connected to him. So she was happy to jump in feet first and start researching with me.
Awesome.
Which was fantastic.
Yeah.
The other match I had was actually a 341, but they had no information except a username.
Okay.
I messaged them. They didn't get back to me. I started Googling the username because, people recycle their usernames across the internet.
Yep, that's a good trick.
But that netted nothing. And then finally, about a month into my search, and at this point, there's a lot of jokes going on in my house about, the usual jokes about Appalachia being inbred.
Yes. Probably some dueling banjos happening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My husband's asked me if I'd like possum for dinner this night.
Nice.
But I was born in Florida. So I'm trying to find a connection between the mountains of North Carolina and Florida. Finally, I get a message from a woman in Oregon who she is the wife of a second cousin of this 341 match. Okay. And she said she hadn't been on Ancestry in a while, but she manages all these kits. She didn't recognize any of my family names. How can she help me? So by this time, I joined all the genealogy groups, DNA detectives, genetic genealogy tips and tricks, trying to figure all this stuff out because suddenly I'm combining history, which I enjoy, with science, which I enjoy, but I'm not so much good at.
Right.
With a little bit of math, just to make it interesting.
Ugh.
I've heard all the horror stories about reaching out to family, being rejected, don't contact me. Yeah. Someone even had they received a cease and desist letter from a lawyer.
Oh, yeah, that happens. Yep.
So I was nervous because I wanted answers, but I don't want to scare anybody off.
Exactly.
So I was kind of vague with her, and I said, I'm just working on my family history. I'm not sure how all this works. Would you mind just giving me some of your family names so I can see where they fit in my tree?
Exactly. That's exactly what you should say. I tell so many people, please don't mention adoption. Please don't mention, don't lie, but you can be vague without lying.
Right.
Yeah.
She threw some family names out there, and we interacted for about a week or two. And finally I said, I have to be honest. I don't know who my father is. I don't want anything from the family but a name. Could you possibly ask I think he was her uncle-in-law.
Okay.
If he knows anything about any family that had gone to Florida, this and that. It turns out I hope I have this correct. Her uncle-in-law was the son of my grandmother's sibling. She comes back with what Uncle Charlie says is, those men wandered. Nobody's surprised by this.
Sure.
How can we help?
Love it.
So God bless my husband. I spent about 8 weeks locked in my mom cave, 8 hours a day, doing this stuff. He managed the house. He managed the dogs. He fed our daughter.
I love it.
Yeah. All the bad jokes aside, he was a saint through all this.
Yes.
So I finally narrowed it down to the branch, but that my grandmother had 5 siblings. And then the particular branch that I come from, my father had 4 male siblings.
Okay.
Plus 3 female, but we didn't have to worry about them. So I'm like, great, I have 5 brothers possibly. Then came I call it the real life stalking. I wasn't stalking just dead people. You use social media, you start going to the people search engines.
Yep.
And I decided one brother actually died in 1969. So I figured he's out of the running because I was born in 71. 4 brothers. I went with the one that wasn't married. And I said, well, if he wasn't married now, there's no wife I will irritate.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Smart. Okay.
So, tracked down the True People search, gave me his daughter's name. So I called her and was kind of vague and said, oh, I'm doing some family research and your your father's name came up and, do you know how I might be able to reach him? And he was in a convalescent home in Tennessee. She gave me the information. I called him, and I'm going to say my mother has a type. So I wasn't surprised at the reception I got from this cranky old man who was like, I don't remember anything about Florida. Who the F is this?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And part of me was like, I hope this man isn't my father, but I'm really not surprised if he is.
Now, is your mother living?
My mother is still living. Yeah. So when all this happened, I guess we'll backtrack to her story a little bit.
Okay.
When I got my 23andMe results, I called her and said, she was young when I was born. She was 20. She had taken off to Florida to avoid overbearing parents. Mm-hmm. And, she was a 20-year-old living the life. Right. I can't fault her for, of course, whatever decisions she made.
Things happen.
So I said, is it possible somebody else could be my father than the man on my birth certificate? Because I will also say they weren't married, and I had no relationship with him growing up, which is actually one of the reasons I started doing genealogy, was to become connected to that side of the family.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So Mom, anything you want to tell me? No, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand how these things work. I don't, there's nothing to say.
Okay.
All
right.
So then I do the ancestry test, and I have to call her back and say, Mom, now really, I've done 2 tests, 2 separate companies. There's no mistakes. Really, was there anybody else? So she comes back with, all right, there might have been this one guy. I worked at the Waffle House when I moved to Florida, which, let me tell you, there are a lot of jokes about the Waffle House. We'll get to those.
I'm sure.
She said, I worked at the Waffle House and there was a Pepsi driver. I said, okay.
Awesome. Okay.
And she says, I remember him. His name was Ron or Tom or something like that. And I remember him because when I moved in with your father, he actually lived right down the street from us. It was a weird coincidence. Mm-hmm. So Google Maps, her old address, and I look at the streets around her, and I start looking for this Tom or Ron, because it was very sparsely populated back in 1971. So there weren't a lot of houses on that street.
Okay.
And I look up the old directories. I look for the people who lived near them. What I find was he didn't even use his real name. I feel so bad for my mom. Oh. I find Sam Gibson lived on the same street, worked for RC Cola, whose logo was very similar to Pepsi back in the day.
Okay.
Who was married with 3 kids. Where part of me is going, oh, Mom.
Wait, where did you find the part about him working for RC Cola back then?
Because the old directories back in the day would have your occupation and your spouse listed with you.
Yeah, so that's like the Polk directories.
Right.
Oh, very cool. Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's a good tip.
So I did a whole ancestry search on him, found his children, but even though, interestingly enough, he was from North Carolina, none of his family matched my family.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Mom, anything else you want to tell me?
So it wasn't the RC guy.
It wasn't the RC guy.
Oh, okay.
So go back to Mom. No, there's nothing else. I don't know who else it could have been.
Oh, my Lord.
So now we go back to the Hodge family, and I've contacted the first brother, Lynn. And Lynn was actually he wasn't an undertaker. He did casket transport. So he moved them from funeral home to funeral home.
Okay.
So I asked Mom, I'm like, do you remember this guy? Because that's a very odd occupation to have, like casket transport person.
Very specific, yes.
And she's like, actually, I do remember him. I think he was a friend of your father's.
Uh-huh.
But I'm not getting any information out of Lynn that I can use. Right. I don't remember anything. I don't remember anybody. Who is this?
Wait, was this the guy at the convalescent home?
At the convalescent home.
Okay, now we're back to him. Okay, so
yes,
he wasn't the RC guy. That's okay. He wasn't the RC guy. You'd already just realized the RC guy wasn't it. And now you're on to casket guy.
Yep.
Okay.
Who my mom remembers.
Well, Weird. It is pretty specific, so.
It is.
Yeah.
So, but there's always a but.
Mm-hmm.
Not getting any info out of him. I called the daughter back and said, look, I'm really sorry to kind of be elusive with the information, but here's the situation. I don't want anything from your family. I just want to know my family name. Do you have any information about your father, his time in Florida, blah, blah, blah. And she says, Hodge men wander. It's what they do. I'll call my mom.
We love this cousin.
Yes.
Or whoever she is.
And yeah, she's a cousin. And I said, well, even more than calling your mother, would you be willing to do an ancestry kit for me? I'll pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if it comes up as you're a half sister, you're a cousin. Yep. Am I even in the right family tree?
Yep.
She says, send me your kit.
Love it.
She does the kit. She's a cousin.
First cousin?
First cousin, 700 Central Morgans.
Boom.
We're on the right branch.
Yes.
So I get her results back on Thanksgiving. She calls me, or I call her, excuse me, and we talk about the results. She says, I'm going to talk to my mom. I'm going to start calling my cousins.
Awesome.
So she talks to her mom. She says her mom remembers when Lynn and two of his brothers, who actually happened to be Tommy and my father, Bill, took off for 3 months just doing whatever until she threatened to divorce him and he came home.
Okay.
So I said, how about we start with the oldest? I'll send test kits to the kids. We'll just start with the oldest and work our way down because kits aren't cheap.
Yes.
And she said, well, I'm looked at your picture. You look like Bill. Bill's the oldest. Let's start with him.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Part 1 of that. The really juicy stuff happens next week. It's great and also important for a lot of people who are looking for closure.
Somebody told me closure is not something that is given to you. It's something that you take. In other words, you can't go looking for it and have somebody give it. Like, you can't go find it from somebody and get it. You have to get it yourself.
You do, but there's a big problem with that.
Well, let's bring closure to this episode by saying that I am Richard Castle, and I have a website, richardcastle.com, or you can also follow me on the Twitter @CastleSongs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. Follow me on the Twitter @JulesJackson with 2 O's. Follow the podcast on the Twitter @CutOffJeansPod. Find the Facebook group Cutoff Jeans Podcast. Answer a question. Then you can come in. Send me an email, JulesJackson@CutOffJeans.com.
So, Julie.
Yes.
I was thinking a lot about closure. And closure for that poor woman that claims that Donald Trump raped her in Bergdorf Goodman's dressing room.
Bergdorf Goodman's.
So maybe she shouldn't look to Donald Trump for closure. Perhaps she should just look at what she was buying that day. I believe she was shopping for jeans.
She was, and you know why?
Why?
Well, the truth is in her jeans.
Literally.